So now we have the opportunity to set our hearts on listening to the Dhamma. This being the fundamentals of the teachings of the Buddha. Today it's the first day of us coming together to practice online. And we're fortunate to still be able to do this and this is a blessing for our life as well. Why is that? Well, for our life to still have carried on till this present day, for us to still have bodies that are breathing. It gives us this opportunity to be able to create goodness, skillfulness, merit. So we've come to practice online like this. And even though we come from different places, different countries, but we have one heart. This one heart that wishes to practice, to train, and so that it gains happiness. And here, happiness means peace. And the highest happiness, the highest peace, is that of Nibbana. So, from the time that we begin to practice, so like this morning we took up the precepts, the 8 precepts. We also listened to Dhamma, teachings of Lumpur Anan. And we learn about these good things. These are all skillful actions that we've been doing. Because when we listen to the Dhamma already, then we gain an understanding into the way and the path of practice. And when we know and understand this path of practice, then what we know is the Magga, this way which leads us to the end of suffering. And so we need to start training this mind, because these hearts of ours, if we don't train them, if we don't put them through practice, then they'll always be flowing out, following the aramanas, following the objects that appear within them, always moving towards unskillful ones, and the mind never becomes established in skillfulness. Or to put it in simple terms, the mind, it's never in the present moment. It's always thinking off, sometimes to the past, sometimes to the future, but it's not here in this present moment. So that we need to train and practice is for the sake of bringing our minds to peace, to stillness here and now. So we've come to practice together online like this, even though perhaps some of you may still be working, have duties to do. We do those with mindfulness. And for those that don't have much work to do, perhaps you're at home by yourself, you still try to look after your mindfulness constantly. And whatever it is that you may be doing, that you try to do that with continuous mindfulness. When this mindfulness is there continuously, then this follows in line with what the Buddha taught, that the one who knows and watches over their heart will be freed from Mara's snare, which means that they won't have the defilements damaging their minds. So with us coming online on this retreat, we try to establish our mindfulness well, having a knowing here within the body. Even though sometimes the mind may think out about different things, we see that that's normal, because this mind, it's a very fast thing. And so what we need is something to tie our minds to, which is sati, it's mindfulness, sampajanya, a clear awareness. And so if we don't have that, the mind just goes out very quickly, thinking here and there. But with us coming to practice, coming from this and that country, that maybe will be thinking about many different places, many different countries. And that shows that this one who knows, it's not caring for the mind. So we need to try to train the mind, which means that we bring up mindfulness. Mindfulness in the body, in the feelings, in the mind, and in Dhammas. So we need this one who knows there with the mind. Because if we don't have that, if we don't have something to tie the mind to, then it thinks all over the place. And in that case, peace doesn't arise, and what we have instead is restless thinking. So we need to make our minds well established in this quality of sati. Or to have Buddha there, or be reciting Buddha. And when we have those, we're with Buddha, have mindfulness well established, then the mind won't be thinking into the past, into the future, but instead it will be established in this Paccuppanna Dhamma, this present Dhamma, the Paccuppanna Citta, the mind that's present. And in that state, peace can arise. And what this peace means is that the mind isn't proliferating into the past, into the future, but rather it's established here in this moment. So like right now, we are listening to the Dhamma, and we're also sitting in meditation as well. And when we listen to the Dhamma while meditating, and the mind can reach a stable peace. Even though there may be thoughts, we try to bring the mind back, bring it back to the breath or to the recitation of Buddha. And so these are methods that we use in order to bring the mind to firmness and to peace. Because we need to have these qualities of faith, effort, mindfulness, samadi, and wisdom. These are the powers of our heart. And it's normal that in the beginning sometimes the mind won't have much peace, and sometimes it won't have much wisdom. And we won't be able to reach the state of emptiness. So therefore we need to bring up these means of Buddha or of watching the breath. And sometimes, even though we bring those up, the mind still thinks off. And in that case, the great masters have taught us that we should recollect and contemplate death. And when we contemplate death already, then the mind is able to stay put. It doesn't go off concocting, thinking here and there. Because we think that, what's the point in thinking so much? Because I need to die. And eventually the mind will be able to accept this. We'll see how this thinking, it just doesn't bring any benefit to us. And wouldn't it be much better to stay with the breath, to stay with Buddha, to be with something which stills the heart? And sometimes there can still be thoughts, and that's because the mind is not well established in peace. And that's normal, it's natural. And sometimes we may be thinking about something which is good. But even in that case, if that just carries on, then we don't have a firmness, a stability to the mind. And even that can reduce the energy of the heart and eventually lead into restlessness and scatteredness. And then perhaps we start blaming the meditation, that meditating doesn't give me any benefit at all. But really, it's not right. to say that. It's just that we haven't reached there yet. We haven't yet reached peace. We haven't yet reached the foundations of the practice, and therefore peace isn't arising. And really, where is this calm? It exists within our own heart. And so wherever restlessness is, then peace is right there as well. Because when the restlessness disappears, and peace is just right there within the heart. But if our mindfulness isn't well established, if it's not consistent, then we won't be able to see that. So for us coming to join this meditation retreat, and we have time to practice, perhaps you don't have to go to work, so you should be using this to develop your mindfulness. And as you do that, then this quality will become stronger. The collected, peaceful heart will start to grow. But you also shouldn't expect that within these days of this retreat, these 7-8 days, that I have to know the Dhamma, I have to see the Dhamma. Because this is craving and clinging within the mind. So when you try to bring our minds to a place of centeredness and balance, and Ajahn Chah said that this is the place that we will know the Dhamma, when the heart is centered, when it's not gone off into pleasure or displeasure, that this is the place where we will know the Dhamma. So when we practice, we don't need to be concerned about various things, but rather we try to just gather it all in, to restrain our faculties. And even though we may be by ourselves, we may not be seeing anyone or talking with anyone, it's still very possible that our minds are thinking about all kinds of things. So we need to be mindful then. If the mind starts going off, thinking thoughts which lead it to pleasure or displeasure, we tell ourselves that we don't want this, and we bring it back to a centered place. To this place where it's not involved in pleasure and displeasure. To this place where we see the truth of everything which arises within the mind, how it arises, and then it stays for a bit, and then it ceases. If we can see that, in order to be able to see this, the mind needs to have samadi, and it needs to be peaceful. And if we don't have those qualities, then we won't be able to see this nature of arising, persisting, and ceasing. But don't be concerned about that. Rather just carry on teaching your mind. That if the mind is going off thinking about things it likes, things it dislikes, thoughts about happiness or sadness, then Ajahn Chah, he taught us to teach our minds that these are not sure, these are unstable things. And even though initially our hearts don't accept this, as we carry on teaching them, and then they'll begin to let go of their attachments. They'll begin to see the objects of the mind for what they truly are, that they merely arise and then cease. And then with this, the peace of the mind grows, its firmness and stability grows. And when that happens, Then Ajahn Chah said, when we come out of that peaceful state, we come to contemplate this conditioned body, how it's composed of 4 elements which gather together, some earth, some water, some fire, some air, and see the reality of that. And when we take this, and we can look into that and ask ourselves, where is there a body within this? Within these elements, where is there a me? Where am I? Where is mine? What here belongs to me? So we contemplate the very things that we're clinging to, the sakkaya ditthi, this perception that the body is a self. And when we conceive of the body as being a self, then we also cling to all kinds of things as belonging to the self. So we need to try to separate that out in order to see it for what it is. But to do that, the heart needs energy, this energy of peace, of samadi. And if it's lacking that energy, then it won't be able to know conditions in line with their truth. It's like a glass of water that has this mud stirred up with it. And as long as that mud is still mixed up with the water, then it's murky. But when it falls down to the bottom, when it settles, then we'll be able to see the clarity of the water. And so for that, we need to depend upon these qualities of sati and sampajanya in order for the murkiness and the clarity to separate out from each other. In the beginning, perhaps we don't see because the mind is deficient in energy and peace. That these qualities of sati, sampajanya aren't coming up. And so then we can't see things for what they really are. But in reality, really everything is open and revealed already. It's just that with an unpeaceful heart, we lack the wisdom to be able to see it. And for the vimutti citta, this mind of liberation doesn't appear. When that doesn't appear, then it doesn't know, it doesn't see. But when we know and see, then vimutti citta, this liberated mind, liberated Dhamma, it can come up and we can understand and pull out all of the clinging from our heart, the clinging towards this body. And then the mind no longer attaches to this, because we see it for what it is, that it's something that's of the nature to arise, stay for a bit and cease. That with this life we have breath that's keeping it going. And this gives us the opportunity to do good deeds. But as soon as this body lacks breath, then we're just not able to do anything. So therefore, with us having a body, having a mind, we should take these to do goodness. We should be well established in heedfulness, bringing this body to do acts of goodness. Whether we're walking, when we're sitting, we practice, we meditate. Because this life and this body, it's breaking apart with each passing second. So therefore we use this body that's still functioning to do good deeds. And for sure, we're not going to live past 120 or 130 years. That within that time, we need to be separated from this world. So while we're still breathing, We should be very careful, established in heedfulness. All kinds of good things that we're able to do, we should put our efforts into doing them. And those that we're doing already, we try to increase that. And those that we're not yet doing, we try to bring that up for ourselves. And this is right effort. This is also skillfulness, intelligence in the heart. So from sila, as virtue, then cultivate samadhi, as firm, collected mind, and to be cultivating the mind as well. So in the beginning we set our hearts on practicing in this way, walking along this noble eightfold path of sila, samadhi and panya. And even though perhaps we don't notice the fruits or peace arising for us, but don't worry about that. And just carry on walking, carry on going. Ajahn Chah said, just keep at it and don't doubt. Because in order for us to relieve our doubts, that needs to come from meditating, from cultivating our mind. If we're going to listen to things but we don't practice, it's just not possible for our doubts to go away. And therefore, we use this mind and body to practice, like in these days that we have together on this online retreat, even though it's just a little bit of time. But if we use that time mindfully, with awareness, then great benefit will be given to our minds. And at the very least, we'll gain confidence in this path of practice. With regards to the results, to the fruit, you don't need to think about that. And just be sure that if we put in good causes, then that's going to result in good things. That we just do the causes here in the present moment. We take good care of our bodies and mind, bringing them into a state of normality, which means a state of virtue, bringing them to practice sila, samadhi and panya. Even though at times the mind may not be peaceful, or sometimes it is peaceful, that Ajahn Chah said, well, this is just normal. Because along this path of practice, we're going to have to meet with difficulty and suffering. But the suffering in the present moment, it has happiness waiting for us in the future. So we should be firm in our practice of virtue and Dhamma. And perhaps sometimes we'll feel disheartened, like we don't want to practice anymore. And who should we think of then? Well, we think of a perfectly self-awakened Buddha. He was our teacher and the teacher of devas and humans. And he cultivated his barami for so many lifetimes, for hundreds of thousands of eons. So he put in this incredible effort, and then his last life was still 6 years of intense practice that he did. And if just your average person tried to practice in that way, their body wouldn't be able to take it. But our Buddha cultivated these spiritual qualities, perfections, until he could awaken to this Samma Sambodhiyana, this knowledge of awakening. So we should think to ourselves that, well, the Buddha gave rise to so much barami. He put in so much effort, went through so much to do that. And so in our practice, if we suffer just a little bit, then I should be able to endure with that. Because this endurance, it's the quality which incinerates the defilements. So the Buddha put in his effort until he gained awakening. And as we have heard before, that he sat under the Bodhi tree in India on the full moon of the 6th lunar month. And so that's the biography of the Buddha. But in truth, where was it that the Buddha gained awakening? And it was in his heart. And all of us, we have hearts. And so we have the capacity to know the Dhamma, to see the Dhamma as well, following the teachings of the Buddha. That we're able to do this, that we can give rise to this quality of knowing and awakening within our hearts. They say that the Buddha awakened in India, but in truth it was in his heart. And so for us having hearts, that we can know and see the Dhamma within our own hearts as well through our own practice. So as we carry on abandoning avijja, ignorance, and eventually this vimutti citta and vimutti dhamma, this mind and realization of liberation appears, and we can know and see the Dhamma. So therefore, with the Dhamma that the Buddha taught, if humans, practitioners, weren't able to do it, then the Buddha wouldn't have taught it. But the Buddha awakened himself, and he taught, and he had disciples who gained awakening as well. So therefore, for us, for our practitioners here, for the laymen, the laywomen, that we all have the ability to know and see the Dhamma as well. It's Dhamma that the Buddha taught already. It's something that we don't need to doubt about. Because if we doubt, then that's going to make our minds agitated and confused. So instead, we just set our hearts on trying out this practice. Having sila as our foundation. When we have sila in our body and speech, it's in a normal and appropriate state. And then we go about cultivating samadhi. And sometimes with that, peace arises, sometimes it doesn't. But don't worry, just go without stopping. And then when peace does arise, we use that to contemplate into the truth of this body, how it's composed of these 4 elements. And if the mind is in a peaceful state, then through that contemplation of the elements, it's able to enter into emptiness. That we see that the water just goes back to water, the earth goes back to earth, the fire to fire, the air to air. And we see the emptiness within this very body, which means that we see anatta as not self within our hearts. And the mind doesn't go attaching to these things, because vipassana, this clear knowing, has arisen within the heart. Seeing the body as anicca, dukkha, anatta, as inconstant, stressful, and not self. And through that, its attachments reduce. Because we've seen the truth of this body, we know it for how it is. So great benefits arise from this. And when we are able to contemplate in this way, then we don't attach to all different kinds of things. But we have this knowing, looking after our bodies and our minds. And so with us still having these bodies which are alive, we use them to do good deeds, because we still have our breath. So we cultivate our parami, and spiritual virtues, we're not heedless, just like us coming together to practice online. If you still have work and duties to do, then you do those. And do them mindfully. Also the times that we are in, different time zones, but we try to find the opportunity to be able to join together and set our hearts on the practice. And it's not above our ability to do this. We just need to carry on training our minds, carry on putting in our efforts, carry on forbearing. Even though it can be a bit difficult at times, that's normal. But we tell ourselves that this difficulty, it has happiness as its fruit in the future. And so may you set your hearts on this practice. And today it's the first day. May you use these days of practice to have constant mindfulness there. Be mindful of your body and try not to go thinking outside of your body. When you're not engaging in formal meditation of sitting or walking, then still try to maintain this mindfulness. So like reciting Buddha and keeping that with the heart. Or when it's time to chant, then chant mindfully. Which really means that from the time that you wake up until the time that you fall asleep, then try to make your mindfulness constant. And if you do that, then samadhi will need to arise. Because in all of the postures of standing, walking, sitting, lying down, we're able to be mindful. And even this lying posture, that as we lie down to go to sleep, that we lie on our right side and establish mindfulness in the body. And have this knowing there of the body lying down. You can also contemplate how they're just bones here that are lying down. Or it's really not any being, any person that's lying down right now. So it's possible to practice in all postures, and that we are able to make these qualities of sati and sampajanya constant. And really the meaning of this is that the Dhamma is timeless, that whenever we practice, then we get results from it. Whenever we bring up mindfulness, then our mindfulness is there. When we bring up sampajanya, this awareness, then awareness comes up. And if any mood or sensory experience appears for us, then we'll have the mindfulness and wisdom to contemplate and to see how that's not a sure, it's not a constant, a stable thing. And then we don't attach to that. We don't give it the meaning of being me, of belonging to me. Like this body, we don't perceive that, we don't give that the meaning of being my body. It's just something that we depend on temporarily. And even if we really wanted to stay in it for a long time, when its time is up, then it needs to break apart. But even so, the mind, it doesn't break. And if it still has avijja, ignorance, it'll need to take a new birth. So as for our previous lives, perhaps we don't know much about those, but for this life, we know that we've been born as a human, even though we haven't been born in time to meet a perfectly self-awakened Buddha. We have been born in time to meet with his Dhamma, and to meet with teachers like Ajahn Chah and Ajahn Anan. So meeting with their teachings, practicing them already, there's no need to doubt about them, because this doubt, it's a hindrance for us. It makes us not want to practice, not want to try it out. And so we shouldn't get involved in this doubting then. So therefore, this time now, these opportunities we have to listen to the Dhamma, these fundamentals of the teachings of the Buddha, this is a blessing for our life. And that's because it gives rise to brightness, clarity, and a path for us within our lives. And so in Modena, I rejoice in the good deeds of all of you, and may all of you care for your mindfulness well. There's no need to be seeking out samadhi, but if you look after your mindfulness, then the mind will come into peace. Or to put it in simple terms, that it's already there within this body and mind, that the body and mind already contains peace, that right within the scatteredness, within the agitation, there is peace there. Within the murky water, there is clarity. So in the mind which is agitated, there is peace. And if we really set our hearts on this practice, if we make sati and sampajanya consistent, then the heart of liberation will appear. And so may you put this into practice. So once more I rejoice with all of you that you have given your time to come and to grow in the Dhamma of the perfectly self-awakened Buddha. And so may you continue to grow in this Dhamma, and may you gain the eye of Dhamma.